My name is Emma. My story begins with moving to a new house on the outskirts of a small town. I always dreamed of a quiet life, far from the noise of the big city. But I never thought that this move would change my life forever. The house was old but charming. Large windows, high ceilings, and a strange smell of antiquity that permeated every corner. I was fascinated by this place at first sight, and I didn't even think about its history. In the first days, everything was great. I was enjoying my new home, unpacking things and decorating each room in my own way. One evening, as I was arranging the books on the shelves in the living room, I heard a faint knock. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the knocking repeated. I went to the source of the sound, but found nothing. Returning to my work, I heard the knocking again, louder this time. My heart started beating faster. The next morning, I decided to explore the house in more detail. In the basement, I found an old diary belonging to the previous owner. He wrote about strange sounds and incomprehensible events that happened in this house. I started reading the diary every night, trying to solve the mystery of the house. It got scarier with each page. The previous owner described ghosts, shadows, and strange figures he saw at night. One evening, while I was reading my diary, the light began to flicker. I felt a cold breath on my neck and heard a low whisper that sent goosebumps all over my body. This was the beginning of a nightmare. The following nights were even worse. I woke up to whispers and knocks coming from all corners of the house. She began to notice shadows moving by themselves and doors closing for no reason. I began to feel that I was not alone in the house, as if someone is constantly watching me, not giving me peace. Every sound and every movement seemed suspicious and threatening. The feeling of fear became unbearable. I tried to find a logical explanation for all these events, but every time I came back to the idea that something evil lives in this house. One day I invited my friends Josh and Megan to help me with the renovation. They too began to notice strange things. Josh said he feels cold when he walks into certain rooms, and Megan has seen shadows pass by the windows several times. We decided to stay together for the night to find out what was really going on. All three gathered in the living room and began to lay out the sleeping bags. The evening was quiet, but the atmosphere remained tense. During dinner, we began to discuss the possible causes of strange phenomena. Megan suggested inviting a psychic, but Josh was skeptical. He insisted that a rational explanation must be found. Around midnight, we heard a knock, but this time it was louder and closer. The sound seemed to come from the ceiling. Josh and I decided to go upstairs, leaving Megan in the living room. When we went up to the attic, we noticed that it was incredibly cold there. Josh turned on the flashlight and we began to survey the premises. Suddenly, he noticed something strange. There was an old wooden box in the corner. We opened the box and found old children's toys and clothes in it. At the bottom of the drawer was a photo of a family that must have once lived in this house. On the back was written, "The Wilkinson Family, 1952. When we returned to the living room to show Megan her findings, she looked terrified. She said that when we were in the attic, the door to the room would close by itself and she could hear children laughing. We hardly slept that night. Every sound seemed threatening, and every shadow reminded us that we were not alone. For the morning, we decided to invite a medium, as Megan suggested. The next day, a medium named Jessica came to us. She was well known in our town and had a lot of experience in similar cases. She immediately felt that the house had a dark energy. Jessica performed a purification ritual and tried to contact the spirits that lived in the house. During the session, she said she felt the presence of a child who could not find peace. She also felt strong anger and hatred from the adult spirit. Jessica warned us that this spirit could be dangerous and that we should be careful. She advised us to research the history of the Wilkinson family to understand what happened in the past. After Jessica left, we decided to research the history of the Wilkinson family. We went to the local library where we were able to find some old newspapers and archival documents. It turns out that the Wilkinson family went missing in 1952. Newspapers described the tragedy that happened in this house. The Wilkinsons had a young daughter, Lily, who mysteriously disappeared. Local residents talked about the strange screams and cries they heard from the house in those days. Within weeks of Lily's disappearance, her parents also disappeared. The police could not find any traces or evidence of their whereabouts. The house sat empty for many years until my family bought it. After returning home, We began to analyze the information we found. It became clear that the spirits haunting the house could be those of Lily and her parents, but it remained unclear what actually happened to them. One evening, when we gathered again in the living room, the lights suddenly went out. We were left in complete darkness. Only our frightened breathing and heartbeat could be heard. Suddenly, we heard the voice of a child crying. A voice came from the corridor. We followed the sound and found a door that had previously been locked. Opening them, we saw a small room that we had not noticed before. There was an old cot in the corner. On the cot was the doll we saw in the old Wilkinson family photo. Megan came closer and took the doll in her hands. At that moment, the door closed behind us with a loud bang. We tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Then we heard footsteps approaching the room. Hearts pounded in their chests, and the air became heavy. Suddenly, Lily's voice spoke again. "They're following you!" We didn't know what to do. In a panic, we started shouting and trying to break down the door. The footsteps became louder, and we felt something cold touch our shoulders. At that moment, the door suddenly opened, and we ran out of the room. We couldn't sleep all night. Each of us was in a state of shock. We decided that we could not stay in this house any longer. But before we left, we wanted to know the truth about what happened to the Wilkinson family. The next day, we met again with Jessica. She advised us to do one more ritual to try to release the spirits and find peace. She also said we could try to find relatives of the Wilkinsons to find out more. We found the contacts of an old acquaintance of the Wilkinsons who still lived in the town. It was Mr. Harris, an old man who remembered the family. He agreed to meet with us and tell us everything he knew. Mr. Harris said Lily often spoke of an imaginary friend no one had seen. She said that this friend lives in the house and wants to take her away. The parents thought it was just children's fantasies, but after Lily's disappearance, they became afraid. Since Lily's disappearance, Mr. Wilkinson has changed. He became withdrawn and began to hear voices. One day he said that he saw Lily in the house, and on the same day he disappeared with his wife. Mr. Harris believed the house was cursed. We decided that we should conduct the ritual in the very room where we found the doll. Jessica prepared everything we needed and warned us that it could be dangerous, but we knew we had no other choice. In the evening, we gathered in a small room. Jessica lit the candles and began to recite the spell. The air became heavy and we felt the presence of something ominous. Suddenly, the candles went out and we were left in the dark. We heard Lily crying and whispers coming from all sides. Jessica continued the ritual, trying to release the spirits. At that moment, the door closed again and we felt the room begin to spin. Lily's cries grew louder and the whispers turned into screams. Jessica threw the doll on the floor and said we had to destroy it to release the spirit. We lit the doll and the fire engulfed it almost instantly. The screams died down and the room became quiet again. Jessica said the ritual was over, but warned us that we might feel the effects. She advised us to leave the house for a while. We decided to listen to her advice and went to visit friends for a few days. But even far from home, we felt the presence of something ominous. Every night, I heard whispers and saw shadows in my dreams. A few days later, we returned to the house, hoping that Jessica's ritual had indeed helped. At first, everything seemed calm, but deep down, I felt that it was just the calm before the storm. At night, I woke up to a noise coming from the basement. Gathering all my courage, I went downstairs, holding the flashlight. When I opened the door to the basement, I saw small children's footprints on the stairs, leading deep into the darkness. I went down the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, I saw the shadow of a little girl standing in the corner of the basement. It was Lily. She looked at me with sad eyes, and I heard her voice. "Help me find peace." I realized that the ritual was not fully completed, and something more had to be done to release Lily's spirit. I returned to my friends and told them what I had seen. We decided to meet Jessica again. Jessica came back to our house and said that we needed to find the place where Lily was hidden. She explained that Lily's soul cannot rest until her body is found and properly buried. We began searching the house again, looking for any clues. In one of the old storerooms, we found a secret hatch that led under the floor. Gathering all our courage, we opened it and saw the old tunnel. The tunnel led us deep underground, where we found an old room filled with children's toys and drawings. In the corner of the room lay the remains of a small child. It was Lily. Jessica said we should do the final ritual right here to free Lily's soul. We lit candles and began to read prayers. The air became cold and we felt something evil leave the room. When the ritual was complete, we buried Lily's remains in the local cemetery, giving her a well-deserved rest. Now the house seemed empty, but we knew that was only part of the truth. Even though Lily's spirit was released, we felt that the dark energy was still present. Jessica explained that the evil spirit that possessed Lily was still here. He was very strong and needed a special approach. Jessica told us about an ancient exorcism ritual that took a lot of time and effort. We agreed that we had to give it a try, as it was the only way to completely rid the house of evil. We spent the next few days preparing for the ritual. We gathered all the necessary ingredients and found the appropriate prayers. Jessica warned us that during the ritual we may encounter evil that will try to scare us and stop us. In the evening, we gathered in the center of the house where Jessica prepared the altar. She began the ritual and we all repeated the prayers together. The air became heavy and we felt a great tension. During the ritual, we began to see shadows moving around the room. The candlelight flickered and we heard a loud rumble, as if the house had begun to shake. Jessica told us to stick together and not stop praying. The evil spirit began to manifest itself. We saw the silhouette of a tall figure with red eyes approaching us. She exuded hatred and anger, but we knew we had to keep going. Jessica raised her hands and shouted the last words of the ritual. Suddenly, the figure dissolved into the air and everything fell silent. The house was filled with peace that we had not experienced before. After the ritual, we realized that the evil spirit had left the house forever. Jessica confirmed that the energy of the house had changed and it was now safe to live in. We felt relief and joy. We decided to stay in the house and start a new life. Each of us realized that we had gone through something incredible and frightening, but now we were ready to move on. The first weeks after the ritual were calm. We could finally sleep at night without being afraid of strange sounds and shadows. Life began to return to normal and we began to forget about past horrors. However, one evening as I was relaxing in the living room, I heard a faint whisper. It was barely audible, but enough to make me anxious. I decided not to pay attention and continued my business. For the next few days, I kept hearing this whisper. It became stronger and more frequent. Megan and Josh also started noticing strange things. We realized that although we expelled the evil spirit, not everything was so simple. We contacted Jessica again and she agreed to come. She checked the house and said there might be some dark energy left that hadn't been completely banished. Jessica offered to conduct another ritual, but this time more complicated and longer. We agreed because we knew that this was the only way to get rid of the last remnants of evil. This time the ritual lasted all night. Jessica prepared special amulets and protective signs to protect us during the ritual. We gathered together again and began to pray. During the ritual, we felt a strong tension, as if the house was trying to drive us out again. We saw shadows and heard strange sounds, but did not stop. Jessica directed the ritual, trying to destroy the remnants of evil. At one point, we saw the candlelight grow brighter and the anger that hung in the air began to dissipate. Jessica said we were close to being done and we were relieved. When the ritual was over, the house was once again filled with peace. Jessica confirmed that the dark energy is completely gone and we can now live without fear. She advised us to clean the house periodically to prevent the evil from returning. We thanked Jessica for her help and decided to follow her advice. Life at home was finally back to normal and we could enjoy peace and comfort. For the next few months, we did not experience any strange phenomena. The house became a real home for us and we forgot about the past horrors. But sometimes at night I still heard a faint whisper, a reminder of what we had been through. We decided to have a little celebration to mark our new beginning. Friends and relatives were invited, and the house was filled with laughter and joy. It was a wonderful evening. During the celebration, everything was going great. The guests had fun and we enjoyed the company of friends. But suddenly I noticed that the light began to flicker and the feeling of anxiety returned. I tried not to pay attention to it and continued to chat with the guests. However, when I went into the kitchen, I saw that the candles we used during the ritual had relit themselves. I called over Josh and Megan and we looked at the candles together. It wasn't clear, but we decided that maybe it was just a coincidence. We extinguished the candles and returned to the guests. However, anxiety did not disappear. All evening I felt that something was wrong, and when the celebration was over and the guests had left, we again heard a faint whisper coming from the basement. We knew we had to act again. We contacted Jessica and she agreed to come right away. She felt that something was left unfinished and the house needed to be checked again. Jessica did a thorough search of the house and discovered there was another room we didn't know about. It was an old closed hatch under the stairs. We opened it and found another tunnel that led to a hidden part of the house. We went down the tunnel and at the end of it we found a small room filled with old furniture and photographs. In one of the photos, we saw the Wilkinson family together with another child who had not been seen before. Jessica explained that it could have been Lily's sister that no one knew about. Perhaps her spirit also remained in the house and needed help to find peace. We decided to perform another ritual to release this spirit as well. We prepared for the ritual in the new room. Jessica placed the candles and began to read prayers. The air became heavy again and we felt the presence of something ominous. During the ritual, we saw shadows begin to move around the room. The candlelight flickered and we heard voices whispering from all directions. Jessica urged the spirit to find peace and leave this world. Suddenly, the figure of a little girl appeared in front of us. She looked sad and scared. Jessica asked her to come closer and told her that we are here to help. The girl gradually disappeared, and we felt the anger and hatred leave the room. When the ritual was over, we buried the remains of the girl next to Lily in the local cemetery. Both souls were now released, and we felt that the dark energy had completely left the house. When we returned home, we felt a peace that we had not had before. Jessica confirmed that the house was now safe, and the dark energy was no longer a threat to us. We were grateful for her help, and knew that now we would be able to live peacefully. We spent the following weeks in peace. Life gradually returned to normal, and we forgot about past horrors. We could finally enjoy our home without fear or anxiety. However, one evening when I was home alone, I heard a faint whisper again. It was barely audible, but enough to make me anxious. I decided not to pay attention and continued my business. The next day, I told Josh and Megan about it. They also noticed that they sometimes hear strange noises. We decided to contact Jessica again and tell her about it. Jessica arrived and did another inspection of the house. She discovered that there was another hidden room that we didn't know about. It was a small room under the roof that we hadn't noticed before. We went up to the attic and found old furniture and personal belongings of the Wilkinson family. Among them, we found an old diary in which the events that happened before their disappearance were described. The diary belonged to Lily's mother. She wrote about the strange events that began after the disappearance of their second daughter, Emily. She described hearing whispers and seeing shadows chasing them. We realized that Emily was the first spirit to start haunting the house. After her disappearance, Lily was also affected by the dark energy. We decided that we needed to perform one more ritual to finally clear the house. Jessica prepared everything necessary for the ritual and said that we should be very careful this time. She explained that Emily's evil spirit could be very strong and would try to stop us. We gathered in a room under the roof and began the ritual. Jessica read the prayers and we held hands and repeated after her. The air became heavy and we felt the presence of something ominous. During the ritual, we saw shadows moving around the room. The candlelight flickered and we heard voices whispering from all directions. Jessica urged Emily's spirit to find peace and leave this world. Suddenly, the figure of a little girl appeared in front of us. She looked sad and scared. Jessica asked her to come closer and told her that we are here to help. The girl gradually disappeared, and we felt the anger and hatred leave the room. When the ritual was over, we buried Emily's remains next to Lily and her sister in the local cemetery. Now all three souls were released, and we felt that the dark energy had completely left the house. When we returned home, we felt a peace that we had not had before. Jessica confirmed that the house was now safe and the dark energy was no longer a threat to us. We were grateful for her help and knew that now we would be able to live peacefully. We spent the following months in peace. Life gradually returned to normal, and we forgot about past horrors. We could finally enjoy our home without fear or anxiety. We have been cleaning the house periodically as Jessica advised to prevent the dark energy from returning. Everything seemed normal, and we felt safe. One evening, we decided to have another celebration to mark our final piece. Friends and relatives were invited, and the house was filled with laughter and joy. It was a wonderful evening. The celebration went well, and we felt that we could finally start a new life without fear and anxiety. We knew we had been through a lot, but now we were stronger and ready for any challenge. Our house has become a real home, a place of peace and happiness, peace and happiness, peace and happiness.